Here are some tips and tricks for the upcoming Pokemon Go Fest 2022 finale event. We're gonna dive into each 2-hour block and tell you what you want to focus on and what you want to avoid. First 2 hours of this event from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. your local time is called the Ultra Incursion Pharomosa. And when it comes down to the Ultra Beast that will be showing up in 5-star raids, Pharomosa, it's not exactly the most useful Pokemon, unfortunately. It's a very squishy Pokemon, and it doesn't really have any good moves to back itself up. So personally, I would recommend doing one raid in order for you to actually get it as a dex entry, and then I would just leave it alone and focus on the spawns, because again, this Pokemon's not very useful. Even with some move change-ups, unfortunately, its stats just really don't back it up. So unless you care about hundo hunting, I would just get one and be done with it. And also something to mention that if you buy the ticket for this event, you do get a special research storyline for the 2 hours that may actually give you an encounter with a Pharomosa as well. Though that is not confirmed at this time, we have no clue, but there is a chance that you're gonna get one of those, so you might be able to just skip these raids entirely. The spawns during the first 2 hours of this event are pretty decent, so let's dive into them. The first one being a Pikachu wearing a shaman-inspired scarf. This Pikachu is gonna be showing up throughout the entirety of the event, mostly just there to be shiny hunted. Unfortunately, I don't believe it's gonna have any use, maybe in small cup, but we don't know the moves it's gonna get unless it just doesn't get any exclusive moves at all, and then it's pretty much just a Pikachu wearing a scarf. Then it's probably not gonna be that useful. But moving on to the next Pokemon, Scyther, this is actually something you should focus on because we do have Mega Scizor coming, which is going to be one of the best bug types in the game, so obviously having a level 51 would be nice, but also it's good because this Pokemon also has a different evolution with the Hisuian variants. It turns into Kleavor, which is a rock and bug type and a very heavily offensive Pokemon, which could possibly rival Rampardos. We don't know yet. It's not in the code, so we don't know what the stats are going to be like, but I can imagine that Kleavor could be very useful in the future, so good luck. Hopefully you get yourself some good Scythers and possibly a good shiny one so you can get a shiny Kleavor in your decks. Also gonna have Pinsor, which does have a Mega Evolution, but unfortunately it's not really that useful, so I would say go for it, try to gain a good one, but other than that, it's really not going to be that helpful for you. Sudowoodo is an okay Pokemon, fun shiny, but not really that useful for much of anything. Hitmontop is a rare spawn, so good luck. Hopefully you guys get a shiny one of those in the wild. Metatite is very useful for PvP. Metachamp specifically is a just absolute monster. I've been seeing it a lot in Great League, so if you haven't gotten yourself a good one for those 2 hours, definitely grind as many Metatites as you can. Anorith is more of a collector's Pokemon when it evolves into Armaldo. It's really not that useful. Kricketot, not useful at all, really. I mean, go for it if you need the shiny, but other than that, you can pretty much avoid those. Woobats, though it is somewhat of a rare shiny nowadays, it's still not that great, but Carablast is a Pokemon I would definitely recommend you focus on, mostly due to PvP. When it evolves into a Scavalier, it's a very useful Pokemon. I see it a lot in Ultra League, and plus it is a brand new shiny, all things considered, so if you missed out on it the first time, hopefully you'll get it this time. The second quarter of this event will be happening from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m., and it will be the Buzzwole incursions, which means that Buzzwole will be showing up in the 5-star raids during this 2 hours, and this is a very useful Pokemon comparatively to Pharomosa. Though it does share the same typing of bug and fighting, this Pokemon is useful in every single PvP league, from Great, Ultra, and Master League. But when it comes down to raids, you only will be able to use them in Ultra and Master League because you can't get one that's going to be small enough for Great League unless you buy the ticket, which again, possibly could give you a Buzzwole that will be usable in Great League. I personally use the one that I got from Seattle Go Fest, and that thing is very, very useful in Great League, so if you haven't bought a ticket already, you might want to do it just because this thing is a very useful Pokemon. And for the spawns, we've got some pretty decent ones in here. Obviously, we're going to have the Pikachu again, but we're also going to have Machop, which has shown up for Spotlight Hours and for Community Day, but you want to get XL candies for this Pokemon because Shadow Machamp is the #1 fighting type Pokemon in this game, so you want to be able to max out as many of those as possible. Plus, there is a Gigantamax Machamp in the future that could be extremely useful. We don't know yet, we don't know how they're gonna work, but I would imagine a giant Machamp is probably gonna be pretty useful in the future. We'll also have Geodude, which is pretty meh. There's Hitmonlee and Shan, which aren't really useful for anything, but for you shiny hunters out there that haven't gotten one yet, there is a chance for you to get it. There's also Magmar, which is kind of useless, unfortunately. There's also Numel, which is one of the newer shinies. It does have a Mega in the future, so if you don't have those shinies, good luck, or a good one. Hopefully you'll be able to get one, but when it comes down to Mega Camerupt, not the most useful Pokemon. But there's also Cranidos in here, and Cranidos, as I mentioned earlier, when it is evolved into Rampardos, is the #1 rock type in all of Pokemon Go, and possibly future-proof, so try to catch as many of those for the XL candies, and hopefully you'll get some good IVs, because a 100% level 50 Rampardos is an extremely useful Pokemon. And then we also have Drillbur, which is very useful in PvP when it is evolved into a Escavalier, and I believe mostly Master League is where you see these things. Occasionally I see them in Ultra League, but mostly in Master League, but I also use them against the Team Go Rocket leaders, and Escavalier is just really, really useful. And then lastly, we'll have Axew, which is one of the newer shinies, and it is a beautiful shiny. As for its usefulness, not exactly one of the most useful ones, but it does have a great shiny line, so it's really up to you if you go for it. The third quarter of this event will be taking place from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. your local time, and it will be the Xurkitree incursions. And this is a very useful Pokemon. It is a pure electric type, and it is the most powerful electric type Pokemon in the game, except for when it comes down to Shadows. Shadow Electivire is the only thing that beats it by a slight margin, and those are pretty hard to come by, so I would actually suggest you guys raid this a lot. Try to get as many of them as possible, because this thing is almost future-proof minus Shadows, unless there is a Shadow Xurkitree in the future. This thing is just really overpowered. Plus, if you buy the ticket, again, you might get another chance at a lower one, though it's not really useful for anything in PvP. It's mostly a raid Pokemon, but when you want to do things like Kyogre or any other water-type Pokemon, this is what you want to use. As for spawns, of course, we're going to have Pikachu, though it is more fitting in here because it is an electric-type Pokemon. There's also Electabuzz. Catch as many of those as possible for the XLs. If you do the Shadow grind and you want those Electivires, it is a very good thing to have a lot of XLs for, so you can max them out. There's also Electrike. It has a Mega, not really one of the most useful Pokemon, but if you don't have a shiny, good luck. Shinx, we had a community day for it, not exactly the most exciting thing. We have Laleep, mostly a shiny prize. Nobody really uses this for anything as far as I am aware. There is the Sandy Burmy, which is a pretty rare Burmy cloak, so good luck. Hopefully you get the shiny for it. When it evolves into Wormadam, it's not really that useful. The Trash Cloak Burmy is the most useful in terms of that. There's also Combee, which is a decently rare shiny, especially for the female, so good luck. Hopefully you get that one, but in terms of usefulness, it's not really that useful. Fungus is pretty cool all in all, but again, not exactly one of the most useful Pokemon, but it is one of the newer shinies that was introduced in Berlin. Joltik, very useful for PvP as Galvantula, so try to get a good one of those. Shelmet, not as useful, unfortunately, like Hieroblast. When it evolves into a Celigore, it's really not that useful. So hopefully you get the shiny so you can complete the sets or whatever, but other than that, I think it also has slight uses in some small cups. I've seen people use them, so it's not completely useless, but in terms of everything else, not the best. And then lastly, we have Stunfisk. Try to catch as many of those as possible. Get XLs, so you can power up possibly your Galarian ones if you have a 100%. A very useful Pokemon to max out all the way for Ultra League, and then also just normally this Stunfisk is also very useful in PvP as well. Galarian and Unova Stunfisk, pretty useful in PvP, but when it comes down to raids and stuff like that, not that useful. So if you don't PvP at all, you could probably just ignore this one. And the final quarter, which will take place from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. your local time, will be the Nihilego incursions, though all 4 Ultra Beasts will be showing up in raids during this time. So if you missed out on any of the Ultra Beasts that you really wanted to hunt even more for, this would be the time to do it. When it comes down to Nihilego, the Poison and Rock type Pokemon, unfortunately, it just doesn't have the moves to back itself up. It is a pretty decent Pokemon stats-wise, but its moves do unfortunately bring it down. Though if it does get a good fast move in the future, it could be potentially very useful for things like PvP, maybe even possibly some raids, but for right now, maybe do a couple, try to get a good one maybe, but I would probably not really focus on it too much unless you are a hundo collector, then again, go for all of them. And the Pokemon showing up during this time will be Bulbasaur, Pikachu again wearing the scarf, Clefairy, very useful in PvP as a Clefable, people use it a lot, it is really devastating. There's also Tentacool, decently useful Pokemon in Small Cup I've noticed, but as a Tentacruel, doesn't really perform as well I've noticed. Chansey, a very good Pokemon, like in PvP, I actually use a 100% one of these things at level 50. It's a really big tank. It actually has gotten me a few wins, so you can go for that. There's also Tangela. Tangela's alright as a grass-type Pokemon, especially as a shadow grass-type Pokemon when it is evolved into Tangrowth, so you could definitely use the XLs in order to, you know, power these up. Ammonite is fine. Amistar, decent Pokemon, but not really that useful. Chikorita is actually pretty useful in Small Cup, I've noticed. It's a very, very useful Pokemon. Turtwig, not so much, unfortunately. Plant Burmy is okay. Munna is a brand new shiny. In terms of usefulness in this game, not useful at all, but it is a beautiful shiny. Absolutely beautiful shiny, and when it evolves into Musharna, really nice shiny as well, though I do like Munna a lot more. There's the female Frillish, which is a really good Pokemon when it is evolved into Jellicent. Jellicent in PvP is very, very difficult to deal with, unless you have Dark or Ghost-type Pokemon, but I've had a lot of hard encounters with this thing, so try to get as many Frillishes as possible, because people love those in trades. Swirlix is also pretty decent. It's not really usable for much, but it is a brand new shiny that was introduced in Sapporo, so good luck, hopefully you get it. And lastly, there's Skrelp, which is actually a pretty decent Pokemon when it is evolved into Dragalge. I've seen it being used in a few cups in PvP, and it is very useful. A tad squishy under the wrong circumstances, but in the right circumstances, it's actually pretty good. Now let's dive into the Megas that I would use for each of the 2-hour blocks. For the first 2 hours, I would use either Mega Beedrill for the Scyther XLs. Scyther is a very useful Pokemon, again, like I mentioned before. Or if you really want to focus on the fighting types, I would go with Mega Lopunny. It definitely is very useful, especially for those Metacham XLs. You really want to get Metatite XLs so your Metachams can be powered up all the way, because again, very useful Pokemon in PvP. Plus, it does have a Mega in the future, so possibly it could be very useful. For the second quarter, I would definitely recommend these two Megas. The first one being Mega Aerodactyl, very, very useful for the Cranidos XLs, which again is #1 rock type in the game, so you really want to focus on that. But if you would rather focus on the Machops, obviously Mega Lopunny is a fighting type Pokemon, so that would be good for that. For the third quarter, I would definitely use either Mega Manectric or Mega Ampharos, either one that's electric, it doesn't matter. You want to get a lot of Xurkitree XLs, and you want to get a lot of Electabuzz XLs as well, so I would use those two for sure. For the final quarter, I would personally probably use Mega Altaria, because there's a lot of fairy types in here that are somewhat decently useful, so Mega Altaria is part fairy, that would be pretty good, or Mega Kangaskhan if you really want to go for the Chansey XLs. Those would be the two that I would go for that one. Now I'm sure you're wondering whether or not you should buy the ticket for the full ticketed experience. Let's just go over them real quick and then I'll give you my honest thoughts on them. The first one is, for the first time in Pokemon Go, you'll be able to encounter Shiny Unknown N or X if you're lucky. These could possibly be full odd shinies. We don't know yet. They could be boosted, but there is no talk about boosted shiny rates at all anywhere on here. So that is something to note, that you might be seeing N and X, but that doesn't mean you're gonna see a shiny one. There could be a very low chance of that. Spending a stop at a gym will give you up to 9 in-person raid passes, which is really good for the Ultra Beast, so that's actually pretty useful. Take up to 5 snapshots during the event for a surprise. You'll get 5 encounters with the Scarf Pikachu, so it's up to you if you think that's worth it. It's good for the badge if you care about that. Earn an extra 5,000 XP in rewards when you win an in-person raid, so if you're not doing a remote raids at any point, you might like the extra little bit of XP if you need it. Incense activated during the event hours will last for 2 hours, so you only have to use 4 instead of 8 if you want to use incense the entire time. It's a pretty decent bonus. Earn 3 times XP for spinning photo disc and Pokestops and gyms. If you care about the XP grind, that's not bad. Half-hatch distance when eggs are placed in incubators during event hours. There is no event eggs during this time, according to this, so I don't really know how useful that is to you. If you want to hatch more eggs just because you can, feel free. It's a good way to get Stardust and XP, but other than that, there doesn't seem to be anything really cool in these eggs, so that's really up to you. And lastly, starting at 10 a.m. local time, trainers who have caught Skyform Shaman will be able to change it to its land form and vice versa. Okay. I mean, both of them aren't really that useful at all. I think Skyform's slightly more useful if you have the correct hidden power, which I believe is the grass one. So if you have one of those, awesome. If you don't, I mean, it's really up to you. If you want to have more sky forms or if you want some more land forms, do it if you want. If you have a ticket, you'll also get an encounter with Skyform Shaman. So if you've been to the in-person events, you're going to get another one, which is pretty cool, which you can transform. So hopefully you get a good one there. You also can get the Rehab, but without the visor. And you can also get the Shaman shirt. Pretty neat. And then, as I mentioned before, you do get something from each of these incursion times. And I think that at the end of these, you're going to get the Ultra Ultra Beasts from them. At least that's what feels like should happen, but again, there's no way to confirm that because it doesn't explicitly say on here. And then there's going to be specific Pokemon showing up on these incenses during each incursion. So for the first 2 hours, Galarian, Mr. Mime, and Pansage will be showing up. So if you care about those Pokemon, go ahead. And these unknowns are going to be showing up through the entirety of the event if you have a ticket. There's the B for Buzzwole. I want to say G for Go. There's N for Nihilego. O for Go, I want to say. P for Pharomosa, S for Shaman, and X for Xurkitree is what I think this is all for. So pretty neat. If you want to do this, you get encounters with those Pokemon. And again, we don't know if there's going to be any shiny boosts on these, so we need to always keep that in mind. But when it comes down to the Buzzwole time, Torkoal and Pansear will be the only different things showing up during that time. And then for the third quarter, we're going to get Clink and Panpour, which is kind of interesting. And then for the final hour, there's going to be Tropiush and Male Frillish showing up on the incense. But other than that, no huge difference there. Personally, if they said that these had a shiny boost, I would say it's more worth it. But again, there's nothing on here saying that, so these all could just be full odds, and it might not be that worth it to you. I will say, though, it is kind of neat that if you already have a ticket, you can buy the ticket for a friend for literally half the price. If you go into the store right now, you'll actually see an option to gift a ticket for, I believe, $4.99, so that's really cool. So if you've been playing with somebody that hasn't been playing for a while, or maybe a friend that can't quite afford it, you could actually give them the ticket for a cheaper price. And I think that's a really cool community building little aspect, so that's definitely a plus for me. So my personal opinion on the ticket is it's pretty okay all in all. You can get some good stuff out of it. There's some interesting spawns on it, like the regional monkeys. Maybe you'll get lucky and get a shiny one of those. Again, we don't know what the shiny rate is going to be like for this event. I'm just going to go on a limb and say it's probably going to be everything is a 1 in 64 shiny rate. So it's not going to be super common shinies everywhere, but a lot more common than full odds, obviously. So that's what I think is going to happen with these. I don't know about Unknown. I can't speak on that. And personally, I think that the bonuses are pretty good, and I think that the researches for each 2 hours will give you an Ultra Beast. Again, it's not confirmed, but I really feel like that's what's going to happen, and that alone really makes it worth it, in my opinion, especially for the Buzzwole. If you play PvP and you don't have a Great League Buzzwole, that's a huge disadvantage for you. So I think that alone, this ticket is worth it. But I would say the best thing to do is just ask a friend to get you the ticket, and then just pay them back the $5 instead of the full price. That's at least what I would do. I hope you found today's video informative, and if you did, smash that like button for me, show me some love, subscribe to the channel, and hit that little bell icon so you know when I upload. And please comment down below, what do you think about this finale event? Do you think it's amazing? Do you think it could have been a lot better? Please, I'd love to know. Links for Patreon and merch are in the description box below, but with that being said, this is the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one.